Welcome to Storytime with Nanny. This is day 41. I told you that my parents were moving, and so I have been blessed with some books that my mom was getting rid of, and I don't know that we'll have time to get into that even this week, but hopefully we will. Some were mine, and some were even before my time, so they're old. But this was a book, it's actually one of my sisters, and it's the Beginner's Bible, Timeless Children's Stories. I read through this earlier and just really enjoyed it and thought that y'all would too. It says that the design of the cover of the book was by Jerry Werner, and the illustrations are by Venus Davis, Kim Paxson, and Don Wise. And let's see, it just says it's by James R. Leninger, and I've noticed it's just told very well. They are stories from the Bible. Goodness, Summer. And of course he adapted them, so meaning he told them in his own words, so that they'd be better able to, children would be able, most especially able to understand. And he did a really good job. Summer, please be quiet. Yeah, I know you want to get in my lap. You just don't have to be so vocal about it. Yeah. So by the time we get through this, it may take us a while. I don't know exactly how long, but it's going to take us a while to get through that. But this book, but when we do, we'll get started on some more. It says the beginning, which means the beginning of creation. It says, in the beginning, the earth was empty. Darkness covered everything, but God was there, and He had a plan. Let there be light, He said, and suddenly golden light shone all around. God called it day. He called the darkness night. With the light and the darkness, the first day passed. On the second day, God said, let there be a great space. So the space was formed, deep and high. God called the space sky. God made rivers and seas on the third day. He formed the mountains and deserts, the islands and beaches. He planted tall trees, swaying grasses, and flowers of every color. When the fourth day came, God put lights in the sky, the fiery sun for daytime, the sparkling moon and dancing stars for night. On the fifth day, God filled the water with fishes of all shapes and sizes. He made the birds to glide across the sky. God made animals on the sixth day, furry animals, scaly animals, smooth, sleek animals, and on that day, God made man. When he was finished, God saw that everything he had made was very good, and on the seventh day, he rested. Now, I know we've talked about this before, but you see how we've talked, you remember how we talked about we have to be careful of our words, and we need to speak positively, because the Bible says we were made in God's image, and God spoke things into existence. And remember me telling you that scientists have discovered, astronauts have discovered that when they're out in space, they hear voices, but yet there's no one there to speak them, so our words go on. So there's power in our words, and we need to be positive, not just for ourselves, but to speak positive about other people as well. The next story is called The Special Helper. Adam was the man that God made. He had a very important job. He gave names to all the animals. There were many wonderful animals, but still Adam was lonely. God said, it is not good for Adam to be alone, so God made a woman. Adam named her Eve. Eve was just right to be Adam's special helper. This next story is called A Sad Day. Now Adam and Eve lived in the beautiful Garden of Eden. Tasty fruit grew from many of its trees. God told Adam and Eve they could eat any fruit they wanted except one kind. He said, "You must never eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." One day a snake came to Eve. It said, "See how pretty the fruit is on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? It tastes good. It will make you wise. Don't listen to God. Go ahead and try it." The fruit did look good, so Eve ate some. Then she took it to Adam. He ate some too, even though he knew what God had said. That evening God walked through the garden. Adam and Eve tried to hide. God called Adam. "Where are you?" Adam said, "I am hiding. I was afraid." Then God asked, "Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat?" Adam said, "Eve ate it first." Eve said, "The snake told me it would be all right," but God was not happy. He told the snake, "You will have to crawl on your belly from now on." He told Adam and Eve, "You did not obey me. You will have to leave the garden." It was a sad day when Adam and Eve left. God sent an angel to the garden. The angel held a flaming sword. He flashed it back and forth so that no one would go back into the garden. That was a sad day, wasn't it? They did disobey God, and then they had to pay a price for it, didn't they? They had to leave the beautiful garden, and that was sad. And they learned to listen and obey God just because someone else said, "Oh, you don't have to. Do what I say, not what God says." They learned that that's not the way to live, didn't they? This is called The First Rainbow. Many years passed after Adam and Eve left the garden. People began to forget about God. They began to do bad things. There was only one good man. His name was Noah. That's sad that there wasn't but one in all the earth, isn't there? God said, "I am sorry that I made people. I will start all over again." God told Noah to build a big boat called an ark. God showed Noah exactly how to build it. When the ark was finished, God told Noah to put animals in it. Noah obeyed God. He put some of every kind of animal into the ark. Then God shut the door. Soon rain began to fall. The raindrops made little puddles, then bigger puddles. The big puddles became streams, then rushing rivers, then sloshing seas. Soon the whole earth was covered with water. The ark tossed up and down on the waves, but Noah and his family and all the animals were safe and dry inside the ark. Then one day the rain stopped. Noah opened a window in the ark. He saw water everywhere. He sent a dove to fly out and look for land, but the dove came right back. It could not find a place to rest. The next time Noah sent the dove, it brought back an olive leaf. The water was going down. The next time, the dove did not come back. It was time to leave the ark. The ark was resting on top of a mountain. Noah and his family and all the animals came out. Noah thanked God for keeping them safe. Then God put a dazzling rainbow in the sky. It was God's promise that water would never again cover the whole earth. So we have had floods, but not the whole earth. And that's what I think of every time I see a rainbow. It's God's promise, because that's why He created a rainbow, because that was His sign to us that He gave us as a promise. Now, this next story is one you may not have heard of before, and it is a biblical story. It is from the Bible, and it's really interesting. A tall tower. When the world was new, all people spoke the same language. They had one word that meant hello. They had one word for hungry and one word for tired. They could talk to each other and understand each other. One day while they were talking, they got an idea. They said, "Let's make some bricks and build a tall tower. Let's build it so tall that it reaches heaven. Then everyone will say we are the greatest people in the world." But God did not want them to build the tower. He saw that they were selfish and proud, so he gave each person a different language. Now when one man spoke to another man, all of his words sounded new and different. The people were mixed up. They could not understand each other. They could not cooperate anymore, so they stopped building their tower. They called the unfinished tower Babel, because God confused their language there. He put a stop to something men were doing that he didn't want them to do, didn't he? Because he's God, he can do that. A new land is the next story. There was once a good man named Abraham. God had a special plan for him. God told Abraham to move to a new land. So Abraham left the place where he lived. He packed up everything he had, his tents, his dishes, his clothes. He gathered all his animals, and he went to the new land that God showed him. Abraham's wife Sarah and his nephew Lot went with him. Abraham and Lot also brought along helpers to take care of their animals. But there was a problem. Abraham's helpers and Lot's helpers were always fighting. Abraham said to Lot, "Let's not have all this fighting. You take your helpers and choose a new place to live, and I'll take my helpers and move to a different land." Lot chose first. He took the best looking land for himself. It had plenty of water and grass for his animals. Abraham moved his animals and his family. He set up tents near the big trees at Hebron. God made a promise to Abraham. He said, "You will have so many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that no one will be able to count them, and all the land that you see right now will be yours." This story is called The Promise. Abraham was sitting by his tent one very hot day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He was happy to have visitors. He hurried to them and asked them to stay for dinner. Then Abraham ran to his tent. "Quick, Sarah," he said, "get some flour and bake some bread. We are having guests for dinner." Sarah made a good dinner for them. While they were eating, the men said a very surprising thing. They said, "Next year, you and Sarah will have a baby boy." Now this was surprising, because Abraham and Sarah did not have any children, and they were too old to have a baby. Sarah was listening in the tent. She heard what the men said, and she laughed. She did not believe them. Then God said, "Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And God kept his promise. Even though Abraham and Sarah were old, God gave them a baby boy. They named him Isaac. Well, see, when God wants to do something, it doesn't matter. It's going to be done. And he wanted to bless Sarah and Abraham with a baby, and it be a baby boy, and so therefore it happened. This next story is a wife for Isaac. Bo, settle down. When Isaac was grown, Abraham wanted him to get married. Abraham called a servant. Abraham said, "Go back to the land we came from. Get a wife for Isaac there." The servant took 10 camels. He traveled a long way. One evening he came to the town of Nahor. He stopped by a well. He asked God to help him. He prayed, "When the girls come to get water out of the well, show me the girl you want for Isaac. Let her give me a drink, and then let her give my camels a drink too." Down to the well came a girl, carrying a water pot. Her name was Rebecca. The servant asked her for a drink. She gave him a drink. Then she said, "I'll give water to your camels too." The servant thanked God. He knew that this was the girl God had chosen. He gave her a ring and 2 bracelets. That night he asked Rebecca's father if she could marry Isaac. Her father said yes. So the next day Rebecca went with Abraham's servant Isaac. Loved Rebecca. Rebecca married Isaac, and they had twin boys named Ishmael and Jacob. And this next story, you can see it just kind of follows, if you hadn't noticed, it'll just keep following in the same sequence that it did happen in real life that's recorded in the Bible. The next story is called The Blessing. Isaac grew to be an old man. His eyes could not see anymore. He called Esau. I want to give you a special blessing, so you will be a leader, he said. Make me some of my favorite food, then come back and I will bless you. Rebekah heard what Isaac told Esau. Now God had told Rebekah that Jacob would be the leader, so Rebekah wanted Jacob to have the blessing. She made Isaac's favorite food. She covered Jacob's arms with goat skins so he would feel hairy like Esau. Jacob pretended to be Esau. He took the food to Isaac. Isaac felt Jacob's hairy arms. He thought Jacob was Esau, and he blessed Jacob. Jacob's dream. Esau was very angry when he found out that Isaac gave Jacob the blessing. So Rebekah sent Jacob away for a while. Jacob walked and walked. When it was night, he stopped to rest. He put a stone under his head for a pillow. While he was sleeping, he had a beautiful dream. In his dream, he saw a ladder going from the earth into heaven. Angels were going up and down the ladder. God was standing at the top. God said, I am taking care of you. I will be with you wherever you go. When Jacob woke up, he said, Now I know that God is with me. He took the stone he had slept on and stood it up. He called that place Bethel. He left the stone there to remind him of his dream. And God does give us dreams sometimes, and that way we know how to pray about things. A big family. Jacob traveled far away to his uncle's house. He worked for his uncle taking care of sheep. While he was there, Jacob got married. He had 12 sons. Jacob's big family lived on his uncle's land for many years, but Jacob wanted to go back home. Bo, settle down. Sorry. One day, Jacob packed up all his animals and his family and everything he had. They traveled all the way back to where Esau lived. Now Jacob was afraid that Esau might still be angry at him, so he sent presents to Esau. He sent servants who said, Please don't be angry anymore. But Esau wasn't angry. He ran to Jacob. He hugged him and kissed him. He was happy to see his brother again. I think God can, I think Esau had what I call righteous anger because what was supposed to be his blessing was given to his brother because of someone tricked him. But I feel like God must have changed Esau's heart, and God did indeed bless Esau, but he blessed Jacob more. But he blessed Esau, and I felt like changed Esau's heart because after he was done wrong, God still blessed him. So when he saw his brother again, there was no more hurt or anger. He was just glad to see him. What we're supposed to be when we see family and loved ones. The next story is called The Dreamer. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan. He had 12 sons. Joseph was very special to him. Jacob loved Joseph so much. One day Jacob gave Joseph a new coat. It was a beautiful coat. It had many colors, but it made Joseph's brothers jealous. They wished they could have a new coat too. They were angry. Joseph also had a special dream. He told his brothers about it. We were gathering grain in my dream. My grain stood up. Your grain bowed down to mine. Joseph had another dream. He said the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me. His brothers did not like his dreams. They were jealous. They wanted to get rid of Joseph, so they sold him to some traders who were traveling to faraway lands. The traders took Joseph far away to Egypt, but God was still watching over Joseph. And it sounds like it's bad, doesn't it? But God had a plan. The next story is a secret message. Joseph had a hard time in Egypt, even though he was good. Joseph was put in jail, but God was with Joseph. The jailer liked Joseph. He let Joseph take care of the other prisoners. One of the prisoners was a butler. Before he was in jail, his job was to bring the king of Egypt something to drink. One night the butler had a dream. He dreamed he was taking a drink to the king. The butler told Joseph his dream. Joseph said, "That means you will soon be out of jail. You will get to do your job again." The butler did get out of jail. Joseph asked the butler to remember him. He wanted the butler to help him get out of jail too. But the butler forgot. One night the king had a dream. He dreamed that 7 fat, juicy ears of corn were growing on one stalk. Then 7 thin ears of corn grew up. They swallowed the fat, juicy corn. The king had another dream. He dreamed that there were 7 fat cows, but 7 thin cows gobbled them up. The dreams made the king worry. He asked his wise men and what the dreams meant, but they did not know. Then the butler remembered Joseph. He told the king about Joseph. The king sent for Joseph. Joseph told him, "Your dreams mean Egypt will have 7 good years. There will be plenty of food to eat. Then there will be 7 bad years. No food will grow." The king could tell that Joseph was wise. So he made Joseph a leader in Egypt. So do you see how he did have a plan? And what's neat is it wasn't just for Joseph's good, and we'll hear about that soon. So the next story is called A Surprise Visit. Joseph helped the people save their food for 7 good years. Then when the bad years came and no food grew, the people ate the food they had saved. No food grew in Canaan, where Joseph's family lived, but they heard there was food in Egypt. So his brothers went to Egypt to get food. They did not know they would have to buy it from Joseph. The brothers bowed to Joseph. They did not know he was their brother, but he knew who they were. Still, he did not tell them he was Joseph. They asked him for food, and he sold some to them. The brothers went back home, but it wasn't long until they needed more food. So they had to go back to Joseph. They bowed down to him again. This time Joseph told them he was their brother. What Joseph had dreamed had really happened. Now his brothers were afraid of him because they had been mean to him. But Joseph said, "Don't be afraid. God meant it for good." He kissed all his brothers. They went home and told their father that Joseph was all right. Then their whole family moved to Egypt to be near Joseph. So God did have a plan, didn't he? And it wasn't just to save Joseph and to bless him, but it was also to save his whole family. And they didn't recognize him, and you think, how'd that happen? But it had been many, many years since they'd seen one another. And when we grow, sometimes we just look different than we did when we were younger. And they didn't even think about seeing him when they went to look for food. So that was a surprise for them. A basket boat is the name of the next story. Now Joseph grew old and died in Egypt. Many years later, a new king began to rule. He did not remember Joseph. He did not like Joseph's family. He made them do hard work. He did not even want them to have baby boys. The people of Joseph's family were called Israelites, and the Israelites were afraid of the king. One Israelite woman had a baby boy. She wanted to hide him from the king, so she made a special basket. It could float. She put the baby in the basket. Then she took the basket to the river. She let it float on the water. The baby's sister hid by the river to watch. She saw the king's daughter, the princess, come down to the river. The princess saw the basket. She opened it and found the baby. She liked the baby. She wanted it to be her own. The baby's sister went to the princess. "Do you want someone to take care of this baby for you?" she asked. "Yes," said the princess. So the sister ran and got her mother to take care of the baby. The baby's mother took good care of him. She took him to the princess when he was big enough. The princess named the baby Moses. Moses grew up in the palace. See how that plan worked out? The woman was just trying to save her baby, but it all worked out to where she still could take care of the baby and the baby be safe all at the same time. Right in the king's own house. The same king that didn't want the Israelites having a baby was having a baby, one of the Israelite babies raised in his own home. The burning bush. When Moses grew up, he left the palace. He did not like to see how the king made his people work so hard. He went to another land. There he took care of sheep. One day, while he was watching the sheep, he saw a bush covered with fire, but it did not burn up. When he went closer to see the bush, God called him. Moses, I want you to go to the king. Tell him to let my people leave Egypt. Moses was afraid, but God said, I will be with you. I promise I will bring the people out of Egypt. I will lead them to a special land. But Moses was still afraid. God said, throw down the rod you are holding. Moses threw it down. It turned into a snake. God said, pick it up again. Moses picked it up. It turned back into a rod. God said, I will use signs like this to show the king that I am with you. So Moses went back to Egypt. He told his people that God would take them out of Egypt. He would lead them to a new land. Hard times for Egypt. Moses went to the king of Egypt. He said, God wants you to let his people go, but the king said no. So God turned all the water into blood. The people could not drink the water, but the king would not let the people go. God made frogs come all over the land. Frogs were in ovens, in beds, everywhere. The king said, make the frogs go away, then your people can go. But after God took the frogs away, the king said, no, the people cannot go. God made gnats come all over the land. The gnats were on people, they were on animals, but the king would not let the people go. Then God sent flies to Egypt. The houses were full of flies. The ground was covered with flies. The king said, the people can go, but take away the flies too. So God took the flies away. But then the king said, you cannot go. Then God said, your cows and horses and donkeys will get sick. And that's what happened. All the animals got sick, but the king still would not let them go. So God made the people of Egypt get sick. They had sores on their bodies, but the king would not let the people go. Then God sent a hailstorm. Hail beat down everything growing in the fields. The king said, we have had enough. Take the people and go. But when he saw the hail stop, he said, you cannot go. So God sent locusts all over Egypt. They covered the ground until it was black. They ate the fruit of the trees. The king said, take away these locusts, then you can go. But when the locusts were gone, he changed his mind again. Then God sent darkness to cover the land. Even in the daytime it was dark. No one could see anything. They could not leave their houses, but the king still would not let them go. Then God said, the oldest boy in each family of all the people of Egypt will die, but my people will be safe. It happened just as God said. And that night the king called Moses. Go, he said. So God's people took all they had and left. The king kept changing his mind, didn't he? And he wouldn't let them go, and God had a plan. He wanted his people to leave that country. It was time for them to go elsewhere, and that's what God wanted. So that was going to happen regardless of what somebody else wanted. And let's see. Well, I think that's really all that we have time for today. But do you see how it just continues on into what happened next? And then if it's not to that person, it's that person's family member, and the story just continues on. Just like it does in the Bible. But I do love the way this was written, adapted. And it makes it easy to understand. And I've enjoyed reading it. I hope y'all enjoyed hearing it. And I appreciate you turning in to Storytime with Nanny. And I hope y'all come back. And we're going to, like I said, we're going to finish this book up. It may take us a little while, but we're going to finish it up. And then once we do, we'll get started with some more books, and there's still some more, and some more. So we got plenty to read. I hope y'all have a great, blessed day.